HarperCollins presents The Whitby Witches by Robin Jarvis, read by Hannah Berchtold. Chapter 1. Difficult Cases. Mrs. Roddice perched herself on the edge of her Spartan desk and sucked her watery afternoon tea through sullen lips. She was relieved, for two of her more trying charges had left today. She had put them on the train personally. A delicious shudder ran down her spine as she sank her small, irregular teeth into a dunked digestive. This was her favourite part of the day, a special, secretive hour when she could close the door and relax with her Royal Doulton and occasional romantic novel. Margaret Roddice ran a hostel for children, those whose parents were dead, indifferent, or inside. It was a difficult, demanding role, trying to manage a maximum of 16 young people while at the whim of the local authority grant policy. If only Mr. Roddice had not departed from the world so shortly after their wedding. She wondered how different her life would have been. Perhaps there would have been children of her own, even a grandchild by now. Mrs. Roddice rattled the cup on its saucer in agitation and placed them both on her desk. She really must stop dwelling on the past. Donald was a vague shadow from her youth, and she rarely thought of him now. Up until recently, that is. But now that creepy little boy had gone, and she hoped things would get back to normal. Oh, for the run-of-the-mill occurrences, the runaways, the girls who pinched, even, God forbid, nits would be welcome after the turmoil of the last 3 months. She rose to peer out of the narrow window and watched the rain streak down over Leeds. After some minutes of contemplating, Mrs. Roddice returned to her desk, but refrained from draining her cup. The tea leaves at the bottom would only remind her of the recent troubles. "Of course I was right to send that letter," she reassured herself. "Even if the old bat does know someone on the board, she had to be aware of what she was letting herself in for." Mrs. Roddice shook her head at the folly of the old woman in question. "At her age, I ask you," she addressed the table lamp. "Well, it won't last. It never does with them." A thin smile twitched her mouth. "Still," she muttered, shuffling her papers, "whatever happens, they're not coming back here." She bent her greying head over the spread of forms and took up her pen purposefully. Then, with a tut of consternation, looked up at the ceiling and groaned. "Oh, I hope Yvonne won't wet again tonight." Ben stared out of the window and watched the green landscape race by. He pressed his face against the glass and the motion of the train vibrated through his nose. "Don't do that," sighed the girl beside him, as she pulled him back to his seat. The boy squirmed and plucked crumbs of sausage roll from his sweater. "Bored, Jen," he grumbled. Jennet fished a comic out of a large blue canvas bag beside her and shoved it under her brother's nose. "I've read it," he said, without bothering to look. The girl let the comic sprawl on the table and turned away. Ben's eyes flickered over the colourful pages. He pursed his mouth with his usual show of contempt and returned his attention to the window. A curtain of silence and resentment fell between the children. The train slowed and pulled into Middlesbrough. Ben twisted on his seat, his eyes following the people who got off. He was 8 years old, a serious-looking boy with mousy hair and eyes which were set unusually deep below his frowning brows. His sister, Jennet, had the same oval face and unremarkable blobby nose, but her long waving hair was darker, and her eyes were less troubled. The guard strode by, slamming the doors of the carriages, and Ben kicked the seat impatiently with his heels. Jennet said nothing, but looked at him disapprovingly. Ben considered himself scolded, and the kicks subsided. "We nearly there?" he asked suddenly. "I don't think it's far now," she answered. Ben abandoned the delights of the window and faced his sister. With one of his
Sample complete. Ready to continue?